So then, good evening to everyone. Um, so, the theme I'd like to talk about today is peace. Um, Probably some of you have seen this peace walk that's going on in the southeastern United States right now. There are 20-something monks walking from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. They've made it to South Carolina. And they're calling it a walk for peace. And getting quite a lot of attention, quite a lot of people coming out and finding this meaningful in various ways. So I've also been watching this from afar, not not every day, not that closely, but I think it's a theme worth reflecting on. The lead monk there, Bhante Panyakara, he's giving the instruction that people should start each day. If they want to be peaceful, they should start each day with the thought, today is going to be my peaceful day. Wake up every morning. Today is going to be my peaceful day. Write it down on a piece of paper. And I'd like to explore that theme this evening, starting with a little time of meditation together. And then we'll talk about it a little more later. So I'd like to invite you into your meditation posture, if you're not already there. So finding a way to sit that is balanced, that is upright. Feeling the strength of the uprightness of the spine. Letting everything else rest on that. Checking in with the face, letting the facial muscles relax. Checking in with the shoulders and the arms and the hands. Letting everything hang down. Relaxed, comfortable. Checking in with the seat and the legs and the feet. Feeling the pressure that makes contact with the chair or the cushion or the ground. Bringing mindfulness to this body. Thinking for here and now, for this time of meditation. Today is going to be my peaceful day. This meditation, at least, will be my peaceful time. As you say that, you can check in what arises within. Is it peace? Or is it something else? Many things may arise. Many things may cease. Peace is found in allowing the things to cease, to settle, calm. Just setting them aside for a little while. You can pick them up later. Making this a time for peace. You can consider, what does peace feel like? Have you experienced it before? Some time in meditation. You may have had some experience. Or some time in your life, you may have seen something, heard something, felt something. It gave you a hint. Ah, this is what peace is. If you can bring that experience to mind. Invite that here. What were the qualities of that moment? And can I invite those qualities to come here and fill me now? Calming, settling, putting aside everything else and making space for that peace to come in. If it helps you to have an anchor, keep from getting lost, you can always come to the breath in the body itself, the sounds, whatever it is you can keep your attention with for a while. Something simple, something that keeps you steady, that doesn't get in the way of peace. I'm going to be quiet for a while, about 40 minutes, and we'll sit together. Anytime you get lost during this meditation, I invite you just to recommit. This day is going to be my peaceful day. Come back to that again and again, that intention. And see if you can make room for that to grow within yourself, at least for this time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Oh, evening, everyone. Today is going to be my peaceful day. So this is what the lead monk has been saying of this walk for peace. The 20 monks walking across the southeastern United States from Texas to Washington, D.C. And having big crowds come out in all the little small towns, and in the evenings they gather together and they give peace talks. And the lead monk says this is what they should say in the morning when they get up every day, that today is going to be my peaceful day. And he gives instructions, very simple, about mindfulness, simplicity, being with every moment. Very simple things, really. So I've been watching this a little bit from a distance online, and also reflecting on my own recent pilgrimage experience, walking also with a group of monastics through Nepal and India. We didn't walk all the way like they did, but we did a little bit of walking and a little bit of bus riding, and anyway, traveling together on a charika, on a pilgrimage, through places that weren't used to seeing groups like that. So the monks on the Walk for Peace, they are dedicated specifically to peace. That is what they're out to share. And it seems like from the response they're getting, there's a hunger for that. There's a need for that. People are really being drawn to that. On the pilgrimage that I recently walked, we were not explicitly dedicated to peace. That wasn't part of our, branding. But we were following in the footsteps of Mahapajapati Gautami Teri, the founding mother of the Bhikkhuni Sangha and great Bhikkhuni Arahant, and sort of, reflecting like why follow her? What's the point of following in the footsteps of this person who lived 2,600 years ago? Why go a long way and put a lot of effort and a lot of, just time and energy into walking in her footsteps? Well, the only reason is that she is somebody who found peace, the deepest peace. She became a arahant. She became an awakened one. And, as such, she's somebody who can help show the way to others. That's the idea. That's why we would want to follow her, is that we'd like to be able to experience what she experienced, to have the awakening and wisdom and peace that she had, and that she demonstrated. And going and walking in her footsteps is a way of trying to connect with that in some way. So, on one level, this kind of pilgrimage is not actually a very peaceful thing. There's like, you see the videos of these monks walking, there's like crowds of people, everybody's got their cameras, they're waving them, and they're just like 24/7 on camera with drones and hundreds of people with their phones, and everybody handing them flowers and wanting their babies blessed, and there's a lot of hubbub, really, that they're walking through. And, for us too on our pilgrimage, there's so much activity. We weren't having like long hours of silent meditation every day. We were constantly on the move, constantly in activity. So then how is it that this can bring to something like peace? How does it work? And what does any of it have to do with the Buddha's teachings, right? So one way that the Buddha summarized his teachings was, he said, I only teach two things. I teach suffering and the end of suffering, which is a beautiful, wonderful summary that I appreciate a lot. But in itself, it doesn't explain a lot of the things that come to be in like Buddhist religion. Like, why do we have pilgrimages and chanting and rituals and all of this stuff? Why do we have holidays? Why do we, any of this? What does any of that have to do with the end of suffering? And so I want to give you a different alternative summary of the Buddha's teachings, which actually comes from my teacher, Ayatollah. As far as I know, this is original to her, though it's sort of her synthesis of how she understands the Buddha's instructions to us overall in one sentence, which she refers to as the prime directive in Buddhism. Um, so, okay, this is a long sentence, but I think it's a good sentence. So I'm going to say it a couple times. And we'll think about the various parts of it. So my teacher, Ayatollah, says that the prime directive in Buddhism is to offer the very best inspiration, encouragement, examples, and all expedient means of comprehensive support for practicing the path of awakening, and all means of support possible for valorizing and expediting the sharing of that path by those with knowledge and experience in it. Okay. It's a long, complicated sentence. I'm going to read it a second time for you. The prime directive in Buddhism is to offer the very best inspiration, encouragement, examples, and all expedient means of comprehensive support for practicing the path of awakening, and all means of support possible for valorizing and expediting the sharing of that path by those with knowledge and experience in it. So, what I like about this is that it's very broad. Like all of these things that don't necessarily look from the outside as being directed straight on, like boom, right at the goal of ending suffering. Like I'm going to cut it off at its root right now. It's most of us aren't ready for that. We're not ready to go straight to the root and just like slash through it and be done, right? And maybe someday we will be, and that is the goal of the path. And I'm not saying it's not. That there's, but in the meantime, like, how do we get there? How do we get to readiness to even like know what that root is? To know how do you cut it? How do you decide that now is the right moment? That all the things that have been blocking you and obstructing you from doing that, like now is the time, and I can just go and do it and understand what it is and do it. There's so much that comes before that. And so what we need is examples. What we need is inspiration. What we need is encouragement. We need some reason to believe that it's possible. We need to see somebody out there who's doing it in some way, to some degree. And so then once we have seen that and understood it, then we can begin to practice it ourselves. I mean, understood that there's some possibility there. not understood it deeply necessarily, but understood, oh, there's something there that can be done, that can be different. I see it in this other person. Like, who is that other person? You know, maybe it's the beautiful statue of the Buddha, and you see that and you just see peace and you're so inspired. Or, you know, maybe it's those monks walking through the Southeast, or maybe it's our pilgrimage in India, or maybe it's your friend who does something really beautiful and inspiring, and you think, oh, I'm so glad I have such a friend, right? Or it's your teacher, or it's your, you know, somebody who you see who acts a little bit differently, in a beautiful way, that gives you the initial clue, initial hint that things can be different. And, you know, so this says the very best inspiration, encouragement, examples. It's like, what is the best inspiration, encouragement, and examples? Well, that's going to be different for different people. You know, one of the reasons why we tell the stories of, you know, the Buddha and his disciples, including his bhikkhuni disciples, including the variety of his bhikkhuni disciples, why Dhamma does a lot of work in sharing those stories, is because, you know, they're different examples. And one may really touch one person, and one may really touch a different person. But the point is just to provide some kind of connection point for somebody to reach out and be able to touch that and say, oh, I see that, and I see it in somebody I connect with, and then I have the thought, oh, I could do it too. It's not so far away from me, or I could move towards that in some way, right? You need that inspiration, that encouragement, that example. And then also you need the expedient means of comprehensive support for practicing. And that can be many things. That can be like, oh, well, here we have a monastery and we have a Tuesday evening Zoom program. And we hope that this is a support. We're offering this, hoping that it's a support for others to practice. And also the existence of this monastery is a support for us here. It's how we live. All of it is based on people's generosity. Every single thing in this room that I'm sitting in right now was given through generosity. This robe that I'm wearing was given through generosity. The meal that I ate today was given through generosity. And so I'm sitting in this whole edifice of people's kindness. And that's the support that is needed for, you know, for me to live this way. And then hopefully for, you know, me to whatever extent I'm able to share with others, right? And, you know, the thing is, like, it's all connected, right? Which one supports the next in some way, right? It's mutually reinforcing, goes around, and none of us can do it on our own. It's like we're all of us coming together. Same with the pilgrimage. Like, if those monks walk down the street and people don't come out with all their cameras and you know, flowers and everything, then, you know, maybe it's still good for them in some way. They can be mindful as they walk. They can, you know, they can still develop something there. But that connection of like the people and the walkers, you know, the sort of synergy and beauty and strength of that isn't there if nobody else comes out to see it and support it. So it's like a self-created, self-reinforcing thing that is wholesome, right? This mutual support and example. So on many levels, it can be the support of just sort of giving somebody the idea in the first place that there's such a thing as practice. And then there's material support for those who are practicing. There's Dhamma teaching support for those who are practicing. And that goes up to all the different levels, all the way up to those who then can become fully awake. And then the second half of that very complicated sentence is all means of support possible for valorizing and expediting the sharing of that path by those with knowledge and experience in it. So then for those who have realized something, supporting them to be able to share that. And again, this can be on many levels. We can have small realizations, we can have small changes in our lives that over time build up, they grow, and they come into something. If people have been practicing for a while, usually there will be something changing in them that can be noticed by the people around them. And we love to see when somebody can sort of have some positive change in their life and then share it with somebody else, right? Up to those who are fully awakened, we want to tell their stories. We want to follow in their footsteps. We want to make sure people know about these great arahants of the past or of the present and of the future when they come about. We want to respect them. We want to appreciate them. We want to venerate them and make their realization known, so that they can share it. They have that knowledge and experience and they can share it. And our whole, so again, it's like this whole process, it's impersonal in a way, and we can find ourselves at many points in it, many different ways of engaging with it. And that broadness of different ways to engage in it, I think, is sort of what I appreciate about this particular prime directive, because we can see in ourselves, we might not be able to connect with everything, but there's something in there that we can find that's like, oh, this is towards the project of awakening, whether for myself right now or for just developing the culture of awakening that many people can participate in. I am participating in the culture of awakening through this thing that I'm doing, whatever that might be for you, right? And I think that's encouraging, that you don't have to feel like you've got it all figured out. You don't have to feel like you're the lone warrior striving for awakening in the wilderness. Like, no, you're part of this culture, part of what's all connected and bringing us all forwards together. So, yeah, I wanted to give a little bit more example of this. Last week we had our program sharing about the pilgrimage, the Mahapajapati, Footsteps of Mahapajapati Gautami pilgrimage that I recently went on. And we ran out of time for everybody to share, and I actually didn't have a moment to give my own personal sharing about this. So I thought I would share a little bit about that. Well, we had a little Zoom after party after the main event where I did share my story a little bit already. So a couple people here might have already heard it, but I'd like to share again, connected to this theme of peace and how something like this pilgrimage connects with it, even in small mundane ways. And yeah, so there was a question at the end of our last program, which was, what's some moment that stood out for you from the pilgrimage? And a variety of people answered, oh, this was the thing that really was memorable for me. And, the thing that I thought of at that time was my opportunity to be interacting significantly with these sacred relics, which are seated next to me now. And I think maybe I've mentioned before that I don't really think of myself as a relics person. I don't have like a long-term strong connection with or inspiration from thinking about the relics as and then venerating and feeling inspiration. Or I know some people walk in and they just sort of feel a sense of power or energy like emanating from it, and I haven't really had that experience myself. And coming from my sort of skeptical atheist background, that was my part of my path to Buddhism, was the skeptical atheist part. And that's developed now in various ways, but I still have that some tendencies along those lines. And so I tend to have a little bit of a skeptical mindset towards relics. And I'm not endorsing that skeptical mindset. I'm just saying, it's a it's a thing that happens with me personally. And so then it was interesting on this pilgrimage to be part of the team that was charged with carrying these relics, these sacred relics, from here in California to India, through the airport and through the travel. And one thing was that as we were pulling away in the car, I really actually did have this strong sort of emotional sense of connection about it suddenly. Not, it was the idea of that these are the relics of Mahapajapati Gautami, and we're bringing her home. We're bringing her home. These relics have not been in her homeland of Nepal or India for a long time. And there was something moving to me about that thought of, okay, this is meaningful to be able to bring her home. That was one thing, to sort of have that sense of connection. It's like, oh, there is something meaningful here. And then, then we were in the airport, and we had a terrible time in the airport. We got to Delhi, and it was very, very foggy, like pea soup thick fog, and they kept delaying our flight. And it's like the flight was delayed, and then delayed, and then delayed, and then delayed, and then canceled. And as soon as the cancellation was announced, then like this cry went up in the whole lobby. Like people were angry. People were like really angry. And we tried to walk over to like where the person was who was explaining what was happening with the cancellation, and it was just like, oh, the mood there was bad. You didn't want to go over there. It was like this, you sort of had this sense like, let's get out of here. We don't want to be close to this. And so we got out of there and tried to find somewhere else to ask somebody something, and it ended up being this, for the next 21 hours, just sort of like, I want to say standing in line to get information at various desks, but it wasn't, then we learned about some cultural differences in how lines work in India. I hadn't realized that there just aren't lines. What you do is you muscle your way to the front of the desk and you yell the loudest, and that's how you get the person at the desk to pay attention to you. And that's just how it's done. And like, if you're not used to that, it's very shocking, actually. It seems very, from my cultural conditioning, you think, oh, this is so incredibly rude and even antisocial, and what are these people doing? And so, then you have to understand, oh, this is, if you've grown up and this is the way it's done, then this is just the way it's done. And people aren't being antisocial, they're just doing what they have to do to get attention. And if you can't do that, then, well, too bad for you, right? You're not really understanding how it works. So anyway, not holding any grudge about that or any criticism about it, but it was sort of just very chaotic and very uncomfortable, actually, to be standing in these lines and trying to get to the front and trying to ask somebody a question and trying to figure out how we could be booked on the next flight, and is there even going to be a next flight, and where is our luggage, and um, we had this mountain of luggage that we were trying to bring full of gifts for everybody. It's like, where is the luggage? We don't know. And anyway, so we're in this very chaotic situation in the airport for a long time, and we're trying to carry the sacred relics, right? We have these sacred relics with us. And it's like, they didn't have like a magical power to calm everybody down in the airport. That wasn't the effect. But there was this sense of like, okay, here I am, here we are, and we have a responsibility to these relics. This is not the right environment for them. This is not the place where they should be. They should not be in the midst of all this shoving and jostling and yelling and all of this. They should be somewhere quiet or somewhere peaceful. And so, so we had a group of 4 of us together, and 2 bhikkhunis and 2 lay orders, and we were very lucky that our 2 friends could go and mostly do the muscling through the crowds for us. And the 2 bhikkhunis, we took turns to sort of go somewhere quieter and just sit with those relics. So I spent some time out in front of the Delhi airport, sitting on the curb in the quietest place I could find, and just holding those relics and sitting with them, meditating with them. And I really appreciated that, having them with me, we sort of forced that peace, forced me to go find a place of peace and develop a place of peace within myself, because I had the duty to care for them. If I hadn't had that duty, I would have thought my duty is to go muscle my way in front of a line. But in this case, I had a different duty, which is to find a place of peace in the midst of all of this, out of respect, out of care. And I sat there, and again, there wasn't some magical wave of peace going through the airport, but there was one lady who came and sat down next to me for a while and like sat with me quietly for a while, and and she thanked me for sitting there quietly. She and her husband had been trying to travel for their honeymoon to the Maldives, and their flight had also been canceled. They were also sort of trying to muscle their way to the front of the line and figure out what's going to happen, and eventually realized, okay, we're not going on our honeymoon. Not today. And, anyway, she thanked me for sitting out there and asked me a few questions, and just felt like that was good, right? And it was because I had this thing that was in my care that required peace. And, and I think it's good to have those things, good to have places and things that are reminders, that are just encouragement. We're lucky we get to live in a temple, because people, when they come to the temple, they're generally on their best behavior, right? So we get to see people all the time. They're coming on their best behavior. And that's wonderful, right? people live in the monastery long enough, they get relaxed and maybe they don't behave so well all the time. But people who are coming for the day or something, um, it's beautiful to see people when they're really trying to be their best. They're trying to be respectful, they're trying to be calm, they're trying to come to a place of peace and experience something here of peace. Um, and to be able to be a place where people can do that, I feel really good about that. To be part of holding this place that is like that. And I think it's good for us to have places and times where we are constrained, where we are prevented from going and just doing whatever we want. Times when we have to be on our best behavior. Maybe people feel like they can't do it all the time. They can't live in a monastery all the time. They'll be suffocated. They'll be, they can't do all the things that they want to do. Um, you know, yeah, sometimes I've, when I have had opportunities since I've been in monastic life where I go out of the monastery and spend some time with people who are living in the world, and they're doing things like eating dinner and I don't know, entertaining themselves. And I don't know, there's something that feels very, there's just a lot of like need bound up in that, like, oh, we need to eat dinner. We need to eat dinner. Where are we going to go for dinner? Going to do for dinner? And when I get to those, when I'm in such a situation, then I sort of feel like, oh, I'm in the wrong place here, actually. Um, I need, like being in the airport with all the jostling and so forth. It's like, oh, I don't eat dinner and I don't do entertainment. And I'm lucky that I have these precepts that allow me, to give me a reason to just like go outside and sit down on the curb and be quiet. Uh, when there is this sort of even very normal, you know, sort of inner jostling of like trying to figure out what you're going to have for dinner or what show you're going to watch or um, whatever it is. And so to have times and places where you just have to be at least a little bit peaceful. And that's something that we can provide for each other. Something that this practice provides for us. It creates places like monasteries. It creates things like a pilgrimage where people walk through your town and then they have to behave, hopefully. Um, Not everybody does. I think I've heard for this pilgrimage going through the southeast, there's been some places where the monks have been harassed and so forth. It's a heavily Christian area, and not everyone has appreciated having such strong representation of another religion coming through. Um, but a lot of people have. A lot of people have seen it and connected with it in some way and been inspired and felt like, they can see the peace that's here, even in the midst of everything. There's something there. There's something there that they can connect with and feel. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think it is connected with the goal. It is connected with the deepest peace of awakening. And we can rejoice in this, and we can commit ourselves to it, to working to maximize, or, valorize, expedite this happening, this kind of thing happening in the world. And on all the different levels. Also, we want to expedite, not just that first glimpse of peace, but the going all the way, to make that possible, to support that to be possible. but it doesn't have to be something so distant that we can't touch it. We can only imagine. Um, we can see it in small ways, and we can develop those small ways. We can support them, we can valorize them, we can expedite them, and we can practice. And we can practice for peace. That is the goal of practice. And so I hope for all of you that today may be your peaceful day. And we have a few minutes left. I'd like to open up for any questions or comments or sharing or whatever anyone would like to come in with. Oh yes, Chintana is mentioning the dog. The dog is important element. The dog, Aloka, the peace dog, is definitely an important part of what people are connecting with those monks. He seems to be an excellent dog. He's doing a great job. So yes, much appreciation to Aloka, the peace dog, also for yes, offering inspiration, encouragement, and examples. Yes, Ananea, please.
I'm so glad that you gave this talk tonight about your experience, because you weren't able to do that, last Tuesday. But it's really, I'm just very deeply moved and appreciate your sharing and the very depth of your experience and kind of conclusions that became obvious to you through that process, particularly that thing with the airport. I can't even remotely imagine having endured through that. But what an example you must have been to everybody who was there. I'm sure more than one person noticed that there was this group of religions. Well, now in India, I'm assuming they would recognize a monastic.
Right. Well, there's a lot of people walking around in robes of different kinds.
Times,
It's kind of
yes.
amazing, actually, about India in that way. So we're
Yeah.
not that special in India.
Well, no, I didn't mean it that way, but that
Yeah.
although you must have, there are a lot of monastics, but not particularly those that come from the West. Now,
Right.
not all of you were from the West, obviously, but they don't see, it's not that common to see monastics from the West. But just a little sidebar, quickly, that prior to this current peace walk, I read about a year ago, maybe a little longer, there was a single monk who did this and walked across that same route. And it was pretty incredible, where people, would just come up and give him a new pair of shoes because they noticed that, he wasn't wearing any or had worn them out or whatever. So I have to say that this current group, this is it's very encouraging, that good does conquer is not the word, that's not the right vocabulary, but good does overcome. That the evil forces have never. Gandhi said that there's always been evil in the world, but it has never overcome the light. So that's kind of a very lovely example. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much for sharing. Yeah. Any other comments, reflections, questions? Daniel.
I really appreciate you sharing about the airport as well. It was something very kind of authentic and genuine about it that I enjoyed. And I think, I don't know, for me, what struck me was I felt like, isn't that just sort of a metaphor of what we're trying to do in the spiritual life? That we're kind of stuck in an airport with too much fog and everybody's yelling and they're really upset that it got canceled and what are we going to do? And our job is to go outside and sit on the curb. And it's not to push harder than the other people did. It's not to make the fog disappear. It's not to jump in a plane and fly it ourselves or something like that. Our job is to go outside and sit on the curb. And I just really like that image. I felt like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you can hear Venerable Tapir over here. She's saying, yes, that's a good description of samsara. Thank you.
It's true. Right? Samsara is an angry airport, something like
Samsara
that.
is an angry airport. Yeah,
Yeah,
full of fog.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I did have friends who did have the job. They were supposed to be going and fighting their way to the front, and then they're the ones who got us to Nepal eventually. And if they hadn't, we'd still be hanging out in Delhi in the foggy, angry airport. So there's many kinds of ways of things one must do in order to come out of that airport. They made it possible, and also I was glad to have the excuse to have a little bit of peace in the meantime.
I was just very quickly, it is a shock when you're in another culture and one takes for granted that this queuing business is just something that everybody does. But boy, even in Europe, in some countries like Switzerland, where you would think they would be like, marching in line and not make a move to the left or to the right. I was in a bank and this guy was muscling up behind me, sort of like pushing me to get into the queue. And I couldn't even believe it. And I mentioned it to my Swiss friend, and she said, yeah, she said, there are actually businesses at that time, this is like in the 90s, were actually starting to do training programs and stuff, I guess because of international business or something, to train people and set up the markers so that they could not go and jam up like that to the teller's window. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's remarkable how the differences in culture, and I had to sort of like get over the initial shock and then just realize, okay, this is how it is. And if to be an effectual adult, you have to be able to stand up for yourself in that way. And who are we to be so precious about our lines and our norms and so forth? It's like, no, you just have to do what has to be done. So, just a learning process. Way. Yes, Chintana.
So thank goodness for Walt Disney. I think they came up with the switchbacks with the rope and those really long lines that you can make a line out of a clump of land. So
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, there are all these things that we have to learn and that change over time, different places, different things. Richard, yes.
Thank you, Aya. When I was young, I was a monk in India for almost 2 years. And the one thing that I learned when I was there is that all over the world, people have different psychologies. If you grow up just in your own country with very little interaction. Now, here, like say in California, you might end up interacting with a lot of different people. But for me, I grew up in like a suburban area, and there wasn't much more than just, plain vanilla, European type culture there. So I thought that was very fascinating to actually realize that different people had different frames of mind and different approaches and everything to life and stuff like that. the other thing, when you were talking about respecting and taking care of the relics, and so that you went outside and you know, you were trying to hold them in a respectful way or whatever. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it correctly, but suddenly I had an insight and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could do that with our own chaita, with our own mind, hold it like the relics, you know what I mean, and keep it, you know, in a quiet, peaceful place and everything, constantly respecting it, you know, not going beyond certain bounds and stuff like that. Anyways, that thought came to me. And,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
another thought, because my background was Zen many years ago. There's a Zen story. There was this monk. He was traveling through the mountains of China, and a unexpected snowstorm hit, and he was caught out in the open. And he just barely made it to finding a temple, a Buddhist temple up in the mountains. And when he went in, there was nobody around, but he was almost freezing to death. So he took the wooden image of the Buddha off of the altar, and he built a fire for himself to keep from dying from freezing to death. And then the head monk or something showed up after a while and came in, and he was totally shocked. And he said, "What are you doing?" And the monk said, "I'm looking for the holy sharira in the ashes," which is, you know, the relics. He's looking for the anyway, it's a very funny Zen story, but not to deprecate, you know, what you're talking about, but it just, in the beginning you were saying how you weren't really a relic person and stuff like that. So anyway, it's kind of a turn of thought. But anyways, that's what I wanted to say there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Richard. And I think that actually was absolutely my point, is that, you know, by forcing me to take this physical object, that it really is like, then I also do have to hold my chitta like that. I have to do that. It's like an external form that forces me to do that. And that is like the real point. That's the more important thing, as opposed to, you know, for me, the physical object is less of the important thing. It's just, it's a useful thing to teach me to do that. And absolutely, I hope that I can learn to do that with my chitta as well. I don't always all the time. Chintana?
I see that we're over time. I just wanted to ask if at any time you felt like you were risking, like you were going to lose the relics. Like, did anybody want to take the relics?
No, nobody wanted to take them. You know, well, you have to go through security. Bringing relics through security is always a little bit nerve-wracking.
So you got split up then, I suppose.
Yeah, so anyway, nobody was, she had the relics for most of the time in a little pouch over her heart. And the security people were not interested in that.
You weren't walking around with the giant
well, at the time, okay, stupa. Well, at the time when I was sitting on the curb, I did have the stupa, the golden stupa with the relics. We had prepared it so that on our grand arrival in Kathmandu, we'd be ready for the grand welcome. And so we had transferred the relics from the little pouch into the stupa before our flight got canceled. And so then we were walking around the Delhi airport with the golden stupa and everything. And anyway, then we were worried, well, and I had the stupa in my carry-on luggage. And at every security checkpoint, it was getting inspected. No, you know, they definitely every single time it went through security, they wanted to open up my bag and like, what is that metal thing? Not with the relics in it at that time. That was before we put the relics in it. But then, yes. So anyway, but we actually it led to some lovely conversations. There was this one nice young woman who was really curious about what is this and what are you doing, and you know, she just was delighted to learn about it and said, "Oh, this is beautiful." We opened it up and she's like, You call their friend, hey, look at this. This is beautiful. Anyway, it was quite an interesting experience traveling with the relics all around. And I won't tell you all the stories because I do actually need to close our program this evening. But I want to thank you all very much for your patient listening, for your practice and your sharing. And may we all inspire each other together, encourage and support each other together, be examples for each other, and look to the greatest examples of the Buddha, of the Arahants, that we may all follow in their footsteps together. And through that, that today and every day may be our peaceful day. And we'll close by paying our respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. All right.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Thank you, Aya.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Aya.